Welcome, everyone, to the Sunday Morning Marxist Forum. This session is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube with the link on our website, which is ICSSmarx.org. ICSS stands for the Institute for the Critical Study of Society. For a decade and a half, our sessions were held at the Marxist Library in Oakland, California. Now we host our sessions on Zoom, and I should say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, as we have speakers and attendees from around the United States and sometimes throughout the world. My name is Sharon, and I'm today's moderator. I'm a member of the ICSS Program Committee that organizes the forum. Our committee always welcomes input, feedback, and suggestions for topics and speakers. And you can contact us through our website, again, ICSSmarx.org. This is a comradely forum for political discourse and debate. As such, we ask that you show respect for our participants and the moderator of the session. Please note that the opinions expressed are those of the speaker and participants. They do not necessarily represent those of ICSS. However, we are united in our respect for the work of Karl Marx, and we believe that his work remains relevant today. Our motto is taken from Marx's 11th thesis on Feuerbach. The philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Our session today is entitled From Shanghai to Xinjiang. Bay Area activist Elicha Gastelumendi is originally from Peru. Rick Sterling, originally from Canada, is president of the Mount Diablo Peace and Justice Center and is with the Syria Support Movement and Task Force on the Americas. Elicha and Rick will talk and show photos from their October 2024 visit to China. They were on their own in Shanghai and will describe what they saw in a community far from the booming downtown. Following that, they joined a delegation to Xinjiang, organized by retired San Francisco judge Julie Tang. Xinjiang is a large autonomous region, thousands of miles west of Shanghai. This was a central gateway in the times of the Silk Road and in the developing Belt and Road Initiative today. It is also the area where the US has accused China of committing, quote, genocide against the Uyghur minority community. Rick and Elicha will describe what they saw and experienced in travels from desert below sea level to high mountains, as well as agricultural fields and an elementary school. Welcome, Elicha and Rick. Please begin your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sharon. And it's nice to be back at the what I still call the Marxist Library, ICSS. And so, sorry for those who have been with us from the start. We had a little technical problems, and hopefully that's been resolved. So on the map there, you see Xinjiang province. It's very large. Of course, China is a huge country, and Xinjiang is 1/6 of all of China. It's a huge area in itself. And we went there in October for 2 weeks, and we'll be talking about that right now. The first thing is that on the streets of Shanghai, it's very friendly. We booked our own hotel. We made our own reservations and plans for the several days that we spent in Shanghai. Following that, we were joining a delegation, but we were completely on our own. And we wanted to get a glimpse of what it's like in a community not in the downtown area, but is more representative of community life in Shanghai in this case. On the side there, you see the very, very welcoming young woman who was our host at the hotel. It was a small hotel. We discovered, or we learned, that hotels and restaurants and so forth seem to cost about half of what they would cost in the United States. This place was very comfortable. It had a huge bathroom that was as good as any I've had stayed in the U.S. And very interestingly, it overlooked a bustling street of this community that was typical of many neighborhoods, I suppose, in Shanghai, very far from the downtown area. This was the scene looking out of our window. Down at the bottom there, I hope you can see some people on motorcycles or scooters. And one of the very interesting things about urban design in China is they have separate pathways for motorcycles and scooters. They have a sidewalk for pedestrians. They have a roadway for motorcycles and scooters, and then a separate road for cars. And then between those, they have medians and they have greenery all over China. It's quite amazing. Now, this was in the outskirts of Shanghai, but we saw this everywhere we went in China. This is quite common. Thousands and thousands of electric scooters. You can rent them or with your WeChat app. You can rent one and use it to travel around town, or you can also borrow or rent scooters. This was an area that was just a couple blocks from our hotel in Shanghai, and we were kind of astounded by how many scooters there were. People just parked them on there. People commonly travel with using scooters. They are all electric. We learned that 20 years ago they passed regulations in China to eliminate gas-powered scooters and motorcycles, and so they're all electric. We went when we were our purpose at the beginning was to get a sense of just community life in China, not the towers of downtown Shanghai, the finance capital of China, but what it's like in a normal neighborhood. And so this was a park that we went to, and as you can see, there's just like here, you've got a lot of grandparents with their grandkids looking after them. This was a couple of young women who were exercising, and in the community park there, and they had some very good skills. This photograph here, how many people could do this? I don't think many people could, but they were. I think they were a little bit showing off for the visitors to the park. They probably don't see too many foreigners coming into this park. And it was also interesting that in other areas there were people playing cards and obviously doing a bit of gambling, a little bit of yuan or renminbi on the tables, and they were not so happy to see us looking at them. It's probably a bit of a gray area to be gambling in public, but they were having fun and not doing any trouble, so that was fun to see. And here's a lady doing her Tai Chi moves very skillfully, and she enjoyed us taking pictures of her. And you can see on the right there, you can see the fellow in the back there. So it wasn't just women who were stretching and exercising. And this was an interesting scene. Again, this is just going into a community park near our hotel. And okay, this is going to be our first try of the video. We'll see how it works. So does that, is that coming through okay?
Yes, that was fine, Rick.
Okay, good. And then in another area of the park, there were younger families with their kids and young parents having a good time. And here's Elicha with a little kind of pre-toddler, I guess, and the young mother. So it's a lot like community parks here. A lot of parents and kids having a good time, and it was quite fascinating to see there, though. And that the dance program that's probably done at a set time. You know, some days of the week we just stumbled upon it, and it was that way everywhere. There was nothing planned about this. We were just wandering into there at the time that we could get away and cruise around the neighborhood that we were in Shanghai. And very good playground for kids, as you can see here. And there was a big shopping mall near our hotel in Shanghai, and it was very impressive. And the children's area was very impressive as well. They have a sophisticated area. They have sophisticated toys that are educational toys for the kids. And so that was really interesting to see. So this is in a big, like 5-story shopping mall. And here the kids are playing with Play-Doh, I guess, or making Play-Doh. And a big, huge sandbox right in the shopping center there. Okay, and this is another day we went to downtown to see what it was like. And it was also very interesting. You've probably seen photographs of the skyscrapers and the unusual architecture in urban Shanghai. We took a river cruise that was interesting because the skyscrapers are on both sides of the river. And again, it's for people who are going there and estimating the cost, it was very, very reasonable price. I think it was maybe $4 or $5 to take a river cruise for an hour and a half. And on our way back, we were looking for the metro, the subway system, and we were having a little trouble finding it. And so we were walking on some of the back streets of Shanghai, and that was interesting. This is obviously old buildings that have not been it has not been redeveloped in this area, but just look how clean the streets are. I can say they also felt very safe. And whenever people would offer to help us if they could. We had a very limited, we knew a few words of Chinese, but that was it. But people were very helpful that we met. And then following our 4 days in Shanghai, we flew 2,500 miles to Xinjiang, and very impressive scenery outside the jet windows. And so again, we'll see this map it's called the Uyghur Autonomous Region of Xinjiang. And we flew, the capital of Xinjiang is the city that you can see there called Urumqi. And that's where we flew. And later on, following our arrival there, we went into the desert region, which is a very huge area in Xinjiang. And then following that, we went to Kashgar and up into the mountains, very close to Afghanistan and Pakistan. This was flying into Urumqi. You can see the high-rise and low-rise apartments. I think it's got 5 million, something like population 5 million people. So it's a significant city. This is the capital of Xinjiang, and it's a very, very old city going back to the Silk Road days. One interesting thing, this was arriving in Urumqi, a small step forward, a big stride for civilization. And this was the urinals in the airport. And we would see little comments like this in various places where they used a little bit of good humor or encouragement to the population. And this is a map which shows the famous Silk Road, and where the red and green meets the red, or the blue and the green meets the red, that is the area that's in Xinjiang. The white area is to the right of that is the desert, and you could see the Silk Road went both south and north of the desert. But at the heart of it was really Kashgar and Xinjiang. The hotels in China are very big, and when we joined the delegation that Julie Tang had put together, this was with really the coordination, the management of China Educational Tours. So Julie initiated this and did the negotiations and did the planning in consultation with China Educational Tours based in China. And for anybody thinking to go to China, I do recommend checking out China Educational Tours, because they were very good. Now, in Shanghai, we were staying in a hotel that we booked. It was very economical, and we didn't, and it wasn't a big hotel. It was a very small hotel, actually. But once we joined the delegation, we were staying in big hotels, 4-star hotels for the most part, and they are, very sophisticated. And this was the lobby in that hotel. And you can see the mountains. This was looking out our hotel window in Urumqi at that hotel, and there are mountains very close by. And we had 2 guides, one guide in Urumqi and another guide in Kashgar. And both of them were Uyghur. This fellow was very one thing which was especially impressive right from the start, his English was almost flawless. He almost didn't have any accent. And we learned that the Uyghur language, because of the intonations of the Uyghur language, they are adept at speaking other languages. And so they have great skills in that area, and he was very effusive, and here he is showing us the Uyghur dancing style. Our first day in Urumqi, we made a day trip to the Heavenly Lake National Park, which is, it's a prominent national park in China. It's been highly developed over the last 10 or 20 years, and this is the entrance to it. Here we've got a gateway where people go in and they buy their tickets, and then after that you get on a bus which takes you up into the mountain and to the lake and the national park area. But you can see the sophisticated video screening that they have, and you really see this all over China. They are heavy users of video displays. And this was on the bus driving up to the lake, and here is the lake. It was very beautiful. Lots of tourists come here all the time. We were there in October, of course, late October, and it was not busy. It wasn't busy, but there were lots of people there. It's very popular with the Chinese to visit their own national parks, of course. And here are three of our travel compatriots, and Julie Tang, the organizer of the delegation, is in the middle there. And both there and throughout the trip, we ate very well, and lots of good food. The food is different in the Xinjiang area, and they have some more Arabic influence in their food. There's a lot of lamb, of course. There's not much pork, but it was very good. A lot of naan bread and things like that. And back in Urumqi, we went to they call it the Grand Plaza, I believe. And nightly they have events with showcasing the Uyghur culture, music and dance. And this attracts locals as well as tourists. By the way, there's a huge amount of domestic tourism in there. There's a lot of Chinese who are taking their vacations and they're traveling around the country. And Xinjiang is becoming increasingly popular. And at night we went to a nightclub showcase of a dance group that performed dances of different cultures, different minority cultures and minority regions within China. And then we did a road trip to Turpan, which is a city at the edge of the desert. And this was a sculpture we passed symbolizing the Silk Road, the camels, and the patterns in the back are very distinctively Uyghur. They use that design a lot. And that's the shadow of ourselves on our camels. And they're very well trained camels. They bend down on their knees, and we didn't have any accidents, and I don't think they do have many because the camels are very well trained. And in that desert region, which was quite amazing, there's a amazing history of in the desert culture going back thousands of years. And mosques, of course. And there's a famous Buddhist scholar and traveler who's famous in China. And there was a museum dedicated to him. And even in the desert area, there's markets with nice dresses that's in the distinctive Uyghur style. And we were at the edge of the desert, just looking over the sand dunes, which are similar to what we have seen of the Sahara Desert, but this is a not quite as big as the Sahara Desert, but it's huge. It's many hundreds of miles in width and depth. There are cliffs and there's color. It's hard to see in this photograph, but there's definite color patterns running laterally on the cliffs. And here was an oasis and desert village that we visited. They grow huge quantities of grapes in these areas. It's huge grape and melon producing area. And there's also, because it's very proximate to huge mountains that are part of Afghanistan and Pakistan, of course, you've got a huge, you've got underground rivers that flow underground and that are tapped into by the towns and where there's an oasis. And so it was quite really very interesting to see how they tapped into the water and would use it to make tremendous agricultural production in the desert with underground water rivers that are flowing from the adjacent mountains. And then we went to into the mountains, and you can see the dry terrain here, and then the start of snow. And it was incredibly impressive to see the extent that they're tapping into wind power. Now, this is a valley that's very conducive to wind turbines. It's kind of a wind funnel through this big valley corridor, but we saw huge wind turbines, 20 megawatt or more wind turbines for mile after mile after mile. It was very impressive. And both sides of the road had them. Had the wind tunnels or had the wind turbines. And here you have an electric charging station for electric cars and the wind turbines in the background. The canyon leading up to the higher altitude was very impressive with very dramatic scenery and a lot of impressive road construction. We did have checkpoints at various points. There was a checkpoint after we arrived in Urumqi from the airport, and there was a checkpoint on the road up into the mountains, which is close to the Afghan and Pakistani border, as I mentioned. But otherwise, we didn't experience checkpoints. In these cases, we were on a delegation that had been organized with China Educational Tours. So our guide took our passports in, and they were checked, and we proceeded. There's some very interesting YouTube videos of individual and young couples who have traveled around Xinjiang, and I recommend those also for anybody interested in learning more about Xinjiang. And they, like one British guy was hitchhiking around Xinjiang, and he documents his experience. Lots of young couples, I've seen videos, and before I went, I was curious to learn a little bit more. So I looked at some of those YouTube videos that are very interesting, and they underscore what we experienced, that it's a very welcoming place, and and we didn't have big problems anywhere. This again is the valley, and coming out of the mountains. Tajik hospitality, we spent part of a day with a Tajik family. So that was very interesting. They are Tajiks rather than Uyghur. And you've got Uzbeks and a lot of different nationalities in this region, which is, there are 7 countries which border with Xinjiang. So Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Pakistan, Afghanistan. You've got a lot of, in addition to Russia, you've got a lot of countries that are bordering this with different ethnic groups, and some of them, their languages are connected, but they're distinct also. And this was the young family, with the lady is got the classic cap on. And they like their yurts, even though they've got they live in modern housing now. A lot of the houses had yurts in their yards. And this was the hotel we stayed at in Kyrgyzstan. And the city is adjacent to this to what is called the Stone City, and this was thousands of years old. As I was mentioning, there's a lot of domestic tourism. These were some people who were very friendly. They spoke some English, and we chatted with them. I asked them where they're from. They said Inner Mongolia, which is a province in China. So everywhere we went, we saw a lot of domestic Chinese tourists. And by the way, most of the hotels we stayed at were very full. They were, I don't know if they were at capacity, but hotels with hundreds of rooms, they were thriving. Spectacular scenery. And this is a scene from Kashgar, which is an important Uyghur city near the border. And I've got this video will give you an image if I'll try this out, see if it works. So that's just some scenes from Old Town. They call it Old Town Kashgar, which, as you can see, is thriving with visitors and with locals. And there's an adjacent, a very large mosque. That's one of the features of Kashgar. This is a typical side street. And I included this because it shows you here we've got the separate roadway with scooters and motorcycles. We've got, they do require motorcycle helmets, but as you can see, if you look carefully, not everybody is complying with that regulation. I did see a policeman stopping someone one time who did not have a helmet on, and she pulled out the helmet and put it on, and wasn't evidently penalized. But it just goes to show that how widely the motorcycles are used in throughout China, actually. And this is a mosque that was being refurbished in Kashgar. Beautiful stonework, and of course, there's a tremendous amount of jade in Xinjiang and in that region. This is another street scene from Kashgar. There's a big river flowing through it, and in the background, at the center, you see the wheel that is a lot like the London Eye. But it's in Kashgar. This was a hospital that we passed by. And this was looking out our window at our hotel window. And this interested us because there is a big building that's under construction. And so they around the perimeter of the building, they have nice scenery. They've got posters. If you look above the cars at the bottom there, you can see the nice scenery. So when you're at ground level, you don't see the construction site. You just see some, scenic pictures. But meanwhile, they've got a major construction going on. And here were all the workers. When we zoomed in, here were all the workers going about their business, getting ready to pour cement. And this is the entrance way to the old mosque. It's the major mosque in Kashgar, and it's open. As I say, it doesn't have walls. It's open to the air. And it was very interesting to go there on a Friday. It's full of people praying, of course. And we also made a point of going to I think this is every Sunday, they have a farmer's market in Kashgar. Of course, Xinjiang is an agricultural province, and the Uyghurs are agricultural. Traditionally, they're heavily reliant on animal husbandry, and this was huge. There were thousands of people here, and they were buying and selling both individual cattle and groups of cattle or goats or whatever kind of livestock. So it was a thriving place, and they had a huge market alongside that. Horses for sale, people buying and selling them. And it was just packed. It was hard to get into. And this happens once a day, once a week. This is a kind of a special thing to go to if you do visit Kashgar. And here's the market. And you can see the people at the bottom. They've got the Uyghur facial features are somewhat distinctive, and it's not very hard to tell people who are Uyghur versus people who are Han Chinese. As I was saying, Xinjiang's an agricultural powerhouse within China, and it is the major cotton growing area. Here you see a cotton, scooping up cotton. It's baling cotton, and the bales are 2,500 pounds apparently. And this is not done by hand labor. Only the perimeter where the baling machine cannot work efficiently, that's still done by hand, but otherwise it's all done by machine. And here we are talking with some people at this cotton farm. It's very high quality cotton. And did you know the U.S. has sanctions on Xinjiang cotton? And so we had we chatted with somebody, and they pointed out the irony. These are Uyghur farmers, and supposedly because the U.S. claims that there's huge discrimination against Uyghurs, the U.S. claims to be trying to stop this by sanctioning cotton when they're just hurting the Uyghur farmers. And there we could see 3 people running this machine, and we chatted with them a little bit, and very efficient operation. And I asked about the machine. Of course, they started off using John Deere and other Western equipment, but now for 10 or 20 years, they've had Chinese machines that do this. And this is it was a very new agricultural science laboratory that we visited, and it was impressive. And this is part of their efforts to modernize agriculture, to increase the quality and the yield. And so they have this laboratory there. This is on the outskirts of Kashgar. And here was the rather young lab director. And this was just a little display that they had for visitors inside. It was interesting. Across the street from the laboratory was a very interesting place, which was huge amounts of greenhouses, hot houses. And so you can look down that road behind us, and you can see it extending into the far distance. And each of these hot houses that you see on the left, they were also on the right, and each of them is about 100 yards long. So it's a tremendous resource, and it's all very sophisticated. Okay, so this is inside one of those hot houses. And in this one, they're growing tomatoes, and they're controlling the temperature and the humidity and the watering of the plants, of course. And very sophisticated. It's a huge, extremely productive. And here's the control unit for this hot house. And here's Elicha looking at this thriving garden and very much appreciating it. We also had occasion to visit a primary school. Now, this was thanks to Julie Tang's contacts. We were able to visit a primary school in Kashgar, and that was fascinating. The school was in session, and we visited numerous classes. And we could peek in. They walked us around. We could peek into whatever class we wanted. And that was fascinating. Now here, this one is very interesting because she's teaching the Uyghur language, which uses the Arabic script. So most of these students would be Uyghur, and they would know the Uyghur language. That would be their first language. But of course, they have to learn to read and write it. And so that's what they were doing in this class. They were also, there's also a dance class and a culture class. And here's another video that I'll play. Love to got inspired and started trying to dance myself. So you can see the video. I forgot I was filming at the same time. There are 56 officially recognized ethnic groups in China. Largest is 900 million of them, and the smallest, just 2,000 people. I believe there are at least 15 million Uyghurs. And so that was a major part of the Xinjiang population. And this was something that we saw in numerous places. People of all nationalities shall embrace tightly like a pomegranate, cherish national unity. And so this is this is a national kind of not just a motto, but it's a national symbol that they emphasize that all the people are one, and they use the pomegranate comparison. Now, I beware of misinformation. This is a story from 2017. Is this one, China moves to ban the use of Uyghur language in schools. Well, we know that's not true. We just witnessed not only did they not ban it, they were teaching it. And it was a part of the standard curriculum. And as well, in the primary school that we went to, this is a huge poster on the board there that I think is encouraging the kids in different ways, and of course it's in the Uyghur language. And now there's also another accusation is that there is no terrorist threat in China, that the Chinese accusations that people have sponsored terrorism are false. This is a report from December of 2024, so just 4 months ago. Uyghur fighters in Syria vow to come for China next. And it's a fact that the Uyghur militias and militants and extremists have been part of the jihadist assault on Syria from 2014 on, and they have their own militia. The blue flag with the crescent and stars is the Turkestan Islamic Party flag, and they have been politicized or indoctrinated with a belief, and I think there's considerable evidence that the West has had a big part in that, of course, and it goes very much along the lines of the politicization that was done in Afghanistan, which of course has led to the decades of disaster there when the Saudi Arabia and the West indoctrinated people to go up against the progressive Afghan government when they had it beginning in 1979. But in any case, it's a fact that there is a small element of extremists who are of Uyghur nationality or Uyghur ethnicity, and so China is doing what they can to counter that. And our experience, this is the last photo of my slides. Basically, we had a very good trip. This is our delegation. That's Julie Tang, the organizer, on the right. And we had a very good experience both in Shanghai and in Xinjiang. And I would recommend people to go to it. So that's my part of it. Elicha's gonna talk a little bit, and we've also got some videos. How are we doing on time? I think we're doing okay. Of course, we want to have questions and answers at some point.
Yes, so we will give you more time, of course, because we started so late.
Mhm.
But we do want to have some discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Shall I go on?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah, with the discussion, and if we have time, I will add whatever I wanna add, but it's not so important.
Oh, so you don't want to do the,
I did not say I don't wanna, I said, go ahead with the discussion.
If you're sure you want to do that, that would be
Yeah,
fine.
that will be, yeah, I think that is more important to get feedback from you guys.
Mhm.
Okay, so, it's easier for me to see who's, okay, good. So, people should raise their hands. Thank you very much, Rick and Alicia, for those beautiful slides and your talk. It reminded me of my trip. I was there in 2010, and we visited parks wherever we went. I danced my way across Yunnan province. Maybe someday I can go back, someday soon I can go back and visit Xinjiang. People should raise their hands if they want to participate in Q&A. Raise your hand through the react button on the bottom of your screen. I just want to take a minute to talk about our future programs. So next week, we're preparing a program on tariffs and trade from a Marxist perspective. And then May 11th was listed in the our email, and I can't, can someone say what that is? I've forgotten. Oh, it's, let me see. Sorry. On May 11th, we're going to have Bahman Azad talking about the threat of war between the US and Iran. And we're always open for new ideas, so please feel free to contact us. The other thing I wanted to announce is that we do need some funds because we pay for our website and producing the YouTube videos and other communications. So if you would like to donate, there are several ways you can do it. Just go to our website. You can buy us a coffee. We have that app now. Or you can send us a check, do it the old-fashioned way. Go to the website, icsmarks.org, and we'll be happy to take your donations. With that, I'd like to start the Q&A. And Richard Wright, you're the first person. Let me ask you to unmute.
There we go.
Go ahead, Richard.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a couple of very easy, quick questions for you. I think you answered the first one I had. I'm not, neither one of you speak Chinese, I take it.
Mhm.
And the other question is you mentioned that you could pay things through WeChat. Were any other applications available for your use in China? The third one is in Xinjiang, about a half a dozen, maybe 10 years now or so ago, there are warnings of foreigners, in particular U.S. foreigners, going into Xinjiang, in particular because there were knife attacks. Has that been eliminated? Were anything there at all? And the fourth question is what was the prevailing, or were there different modes of management on the agricultural enterprises that you visited or saw, or were they cooperative or state-owned enterprises or private, or could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. On the language, no, we didn't speak Chinese, but half of our delegation was Chinese American, and they were all fluent, of course. On the paying for things, we used Alipay, which we set up here before going there. You connect your credit card to this phone app, and it worked. Well. Most Chinese don't pay with cash. They use their phones to pay, and they use the big ones are Alipay and WeChat. Foreigners and knife attacks. There were incidents of knife attacks when there were the greatest threats or greatest attacks, and that goes back to like 2008, 2009, 2010, that period there where there was extremism resulting from the invasion of Iraq and the extreme sectarianism that was provoked between Shia and Sunni, and some people say the U.S. was cultivating extremism to justify, to divide their enemies and to justify their own military actions. As to the farms,
I think the farm we visited, the owner was present there. He was the man on the left of the pictures, the videos. He owned the farm, and later on, we were invited by his family to have dinner with them to share a meal and dance with him and the family. They get a lot of support, but these are private people that own their lands and they produce all the cottons. I don't know if all of them are like that, or that's not the case that we visited.
mhm.
Okay, our next person is Jean Rule. I asked you to unmute. Jean, go ahead.
I think I'm unmuted. Okay. Well, Rick, thank you. Thank you both for this. This was a great show. And I took a tour of China 25 years ago, and this brought back many pleasant memories. And I clearly you gain much more. My slides are nowhere near this good. So it was really good. And also just mention that there is a Uyghur restaurant in Union, or there was a Uyghur restaurant in Union City called the Sama. So and has great lamb kebab. So if you're down in Union City, you might try to find that. But I guess my question is more kind of geopolitical, because I know that there is the one China principle that is the policy of the People's Republic of China and also the UN, NATO, and all countries in Asia and most of America, but says that there's one China, and Taiwan is part of China, and an inalienable part of China. And I know that United States, although it formally accepts this principle, has been stirring up a lot of trouble in Taiwan. And you have reports that Taiwanese are, getting ready to be invaded by China, which is just, clearly bogus. But I wonder what the situation is with Xinjiang. And you mentioned a little bit about Xinjiang and also Tibet, which is part of China. So, but again, thank you for this, and really appreciate your talk.
Oh,
Well,
I think in Xinjiang, the Uyghurs are part of the community. They own it. We didn't see in any way any police or harassment or a presence that will be intimidating. It's a very peaceful community, very safe, peaceful. I don't think we can address in depth to your question of. I know for a fact that through my reading there is a lot of recruitments and easy way for Uyghur people to come to the United States and live here and become the voices of resistance, or whatever resistance is. But we did not see any harassment or discrimination of the Uyghur community.
Yeah. There was very little police presence or let alone military. The one exception to that was at the Grand Plaza, which is this huge area with a large mosque and big congregations of people. There was a military style vehicle with police on top of it with weapons. That was the only, and that may be because that had been the scene of some incident many years in the past. But otherwise, there was extremely little police presence. In fact, I don't even know I can't even recall what the police uniforms looked like. They were they were almost absent, almost totally absent.
Mhm. My question was more in terms of U.S. sponsored action. I know that they've, the United States does this in Taiwan and also in Tibet. I'm pretty sure you know, the CIA paid the salary of the Dalai Lama for many years, but so that was
Yeah.
more having to do with U.S. involvement there.
Right, and that still goes on. The State Department propaganda about Uyghur, about Xinjiang continues. The sanctions continue, and there's been statements, and there's Uyghur U.S. funded organizations which put out this propaganda all the time. But we didn't see any evidence of dissension or problems there. Now, granted, we don't speak Chinese, let alone Uyghur. Um, I would say that of the two guides we had, one was very, very much on board with the Chinese Communist Party, was a big fan of Xi Jinping. The other was not. And his father or his grandfather had suffered when the Chinese came to power in 1949, and had lost some property, and so so his family had had been on the losing end in some senses. He certainly didn't, he was very circumspect in what he said, but it was clear enough that he was not a big fan of the Chinese Communist Party. But he was also very clear that the conditions of life for most people, and the majority of people in Xinjiang are Uyghurs. The conditions of life are really greatly improving. The investment. One thing that's very interesting there is they have an active national policy of helping the less developed areas of the country. So 20 years ago, and we had people on our delegation who visited 20 years ago, conditions were much less favorable than they are today. There's been huge improvements. Of course, there have been huge improvements throughout China, but especially in the areas that were less developed, because the wealthier provinces are expected to donate, to lift up, and to help, and to equalize the less developed and the less wealthy parts of the country.
Thank you.
I'm going to call on Citizen of the Planet, followed by Mehmet. But first I wanted to say, Elicha, when you speak, can you get closer to the mic? Some people are having trouble hearing you.
I will try to. I'm trying to be close to Rick when I speak.
No, we just go forward.
Oh,
Good.
Where is the mic?
Mike's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Citizen of the Planet, please unmute. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to pose a question slightly humorously, if you don't mind. So the burning question on everyone's mind, so to speak, is when will the U.S. go to war with China? I've often disputed the idea that I've heard for many years now that the U.S. is going to war with China and the U.S. is going to war with Iran. And I say if the U.S. didn't even go to war against North Korea, what makes anyone think that the US is going to go to war with an international thermonuclear ballistic missile superpower, a country of 1.4 billion people, as opposed to the US's reported 330 million people? And I pointed out before here that the US lost its last war with China, and that was during the Korean War, when US troops went up to the Yalu River, and China said, if you come up here, we're going to invade. And China ran the US all the way back down below the 38th parallel. So, and the Quincy Institute, I don't know if I mentioned it, predicted that the US was going to war against China 3 years ago. I think that was Michael Clare, if I have the name correct. He was on KPFA. And if I can sneak in another quick question, how do you
About
think—
30 seconds left.
Oh, thank you. How do you think Chinese companies that are focused on exports to the US will survive in the new trade environment provoked by US tariffs? Thank you.
Maybe I will just comment that in my sense, I'm not very political, but I will say the US had been at war with China all this time in many ways, now more aggressively with its sanctions. But China had been getting ready for these sanctions for a long time, and I think the exports to the US have been minimized, and the internal production of China is being reduced and the consumption is being raised. They have their own ways to deal with sanctions, and they have a lot of connections with all over the world. Peru is one country, my country, that has a lot of cars, Chinese cars, all over, and Venezuela and Nicaragua has buses and things like that. So China doesn't have a shortage of sending their production. It's the US that's going to be hurt mostly. That's my opinion, humbly.
Mhm.
And of course, I was talking about a military war, if you can answer that question.
Right. Yeah, I think there's not going to be a military war. I think the war that we're seeing right now is the war that's happening. It's sanctions, it's now the tariffs, it's propaganda, it's trying to destabilize China through the accusations of discrimination against the minority groups within China, such as the Uyghurs. I think the U.S. has had a program of trying to do that to weaken its adversary for many, many years, and that will continue, and it may escalate. But the U.S. is not in a strong position, because while we're dependent on Chinese products for a lot of goods that everyday people use, China's not dependent on everyday products from the U.S. The products that they do import from the U.S. are more high-end, and that are wealthy Chinese buy, but not the everyday Chinese. And China has diversified its exports all over the world. So Africa, Latin America, the rest of Asia, China is sending all over there. So if the exports to the U.S. Decrease precipitously, as is likely if Trump follows through with the extreme tariffs, it's going to, they're going to feel it, but it's not going to be a big blow. They've been preparing it, and they have a program now of becoming totally food self-sufficient. So that's another thing in their favor. So I don't think what would the U.S. militarily try to occupy China? That's beyond the realm of possibility. Would they simply attack it, trying to hurt it? That's possible, but what would be the end result, except the further decline and escalated decline in U.S. status around the world? So I think I don't see the military option being implemented at this point in time, or given current circumstances.
And did you give a full reason why you don't think the U.S. will go to war against China? military war?
What would be the point? China is, they got 1.4 billion people. Their economy is diverse. It's spread out. They've got factories all over the country. What would be? It's not as though the U.S. is going to try to occupy China. So I think what they just yesterday I was hearing an analysis that says the U.S. is going to escalate the economic war on China by pressuring countries that trade with the U.S. not to trade with China. I think that's quite possible. There could be aggressive moves from the Trump administration to pressure any country that they can to cut off their trade with China. That's, I think that's quite possible. But in the end, it's going to backfire because it's more and more obvious that it's the U.S. that's the bully, that doesn't follow equal relations, that doesn't follow whether it's the World Trade Organization or UN international law. The U.S. is violating it, and it's the U.S. that's the bully and trying to get people trying to subjugate other countries.
And
Thank
I
you.
think we will have more on this whole discussion next week when we talk about tariffs and trade. Let me call on Mehmet, and then Judith will be next.
Thank you very much, Rick. Nice to see you, and very interesting presentation, especially since we are also planning on going to China and Xinjiang this summer and fall. So we were waiting for your presentation. That's helping us a lot. Thank you. Now, Turkey has been a major player in the events around Uyghur and Xinjiang. The people who are actually taken from Uyghur and who are fighting in Syria, as you mentioned, have camps in Turkey. And Turkey controls them, organizes them, trains them, and then sends them to Syria to fight, because Turkey claims that they have the racial or national link to the Uyghurs, as they are considered Turks. But it's very interesting that Turkey just we didn't hear it from the Turkish side, but Russians exposed that Turkey had Turkey had an application to go into BRICS. And just last week, China accepted Turkey to enter BRICS. And Turkey is the #1 instigator of hatred of this. But it's very interesting that with the double-faced play that Turkey does, more than, I believe, 40 countries signed a protest against China on what it was supposedly doing in Xinjiang. But Turkey was not in that list. So that's very interesting, because Turkey knows where it is going to do trading with, where the bread comes from, and also while it is tied to the imperialist bottom. So to cut it short, when I mentioned that we are going to go to Xinjiang, I get this question a lot, saying, are you going to really see the full picture? They are going to hide it from you. You're only going to see what they want them to see. So my question to you is, did you feel free? Did you feel that you are actually seeing the whole thing? Or did you think that you were being played? Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we felt very limited because of the language, but there is more than language.
Elicha, can you speak into the microphone a little more closely?
Yeah, we could walk on the streets. We did shopping. We had dinner at restaurants. We were just like anybody, any person from that population, and we didn't see any, like I said earlier, we did not felt unsafe, or we did not see anybody being scared or afraid, or a feeling of. I come from a country that had been in the state of siege for years, Peru, when I was there, and I know the feeling of being very careful when you're walking on the streets, and that wasn't the feeling that we felt in either part of China where we visited. It felt very, very comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. And so we went to the school, and I'm sure they selected the school. I'm sure it was a good school, and I'm sure the principal told all the teachers, we're going to be having some visitors today. But you can't fake a classroom and the kind of things that we saw. I don't think you can fake them. This may have been one of the better schools in the city, but I doubt if it's beyond out of the norm. And especially, you know, we were looking at the class books. The textbook was in Uyghur, so so I don't think we were. I don't think we were played in the sense that we got a false image. Now, how much could we see? We did ask about the claimed concentration camps. We never got, what we did get was that they were never concentration camps. They were education facilities that did vocational training, and that also did education around extremism. And I frankly don't see anything wrong with that. There was a lot of indoctrination that went on, including through Saudi-funded mosques. And my homeland, Canada, you know, there were numerous Canadians who went and fought in Syria and died because they were brainwashed in Saudi-funded mosques in Calgary. And so I don't see anything wrong with education. There have been some wild accusations, 1 million people in prison in Xinjiang. I think that's just total nonsense. What we did learn is that the education facilities that they had been that program had been terminated. It had been ended. They had done their work in educating and finding out if there was any really extremist elements. But just as the terrorist actions that did take place happened over 10 years ago, I think the education efforts that were made, I think that they're in the past.
While you are there, enjoy the food. It's so good. The lamb is shish kebabs to die for.
Is it as good as it is in Turkey? I don't know.
It's so good and fresh and.
Right, he's Turkish.
Thank you very much.
No food is as good as that, Mehmet.
All right, there you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Judith is next, followed by Janet.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Okay, well, thank you, Rick and Elicha. That was a wonderful, beautiful trip, especially that lake, which was so impressive. And China, from pictures, looks very prosperous. My God, I didn't see anybody that looked poor there. And so anyway, yeah, I basically I want to ask about the windmills and stuff like that. But since this came up, Brian Ehrlich has said that the U.S. military is configured. They're now training. They're training the Navy, particularly by China, and also the Air Force. And one of the things that they intend to do is to interfere with the Chinese shipping, to block their ships from importing and exporting. So, okay, now my other questions are the windmills are notorious for killing birds and for not being subject to recycling. So, do you know anything about? Does China attempt to prevent bird killing? And are they able to recycle these windmills because they only have a lifespan of about 10 years? The other thing is, do they use GMO seeds at all? And do they also have solar power? And the reason I ask this is because basically these so-called sustainable energy forms are only good as an alternative in case something happens to fossil fuel, because they're very inefficient and they depend on the weather and so forth.
That's
Okay,
2
thank you.
minutes.
That's all.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah, thanks, Judith. I'll comment about prosperous. We didn't see poverty. And so maybe in that sense, if you've got a society where you don't have extreme poverty, it's prosperous in a sense. Uh, did we see a single beggar in the whole trip?
No.
So the streets are clean. They seem safe. We saw lots of people who are, they're working on the margins. For example, I saw an elderly man who was collecting cardboard. He had a converted bicycle that at the back had he could pile up a huge amount of cardboard. So he was going around collecting cardboard and he would dispose of that somewhere. So that's evidence of the recycling. In terms of the wind turbines, the bird killing has been done where the blades are rotating at high velocity. And most of the ones now and the big ones especially, are geared so that they travel slowly. So that problem has been largely corrected. Those windmills there were 10 to 20 years old, the ones that we saw in that valley. And I think that was done because China had a huge problem with smog in the cities and smog even throughout the country. So they were doing their most to generate electricity not from coal-fired electrical plants, but from renewable energy. Of course, we saw some solar farms, but we didn't see any at the extent of the wind farms that we saw. Those photographs, as I mentioned, it was just 10 to 20 miles of huge wind turbines on both sides of the highway. So it was like 10 or 20 times or more than you see at Altamont Pass or the Birds Landing in near Rio Vista, which are big wind farms here. But this one was, an order of magnitude larger. So will they intervene in shipping? Who knows? But I think China is going to defend itself. They're ramping up their own navy. They're building warships, and they're prepared to defend the South China Sea. So I think it's going to be a fool's errand if the U.S. tries to do that. It'll also just further expose the hypocrisy of the U.S., which, of course, right now is attacking Yemen because the Ansarullah movement in Yemen, or the Yemeni government, is the one country that is trying to enforce the Genocide Convention, which calls for the prohibition of genocide and the punishment. So Yemen is blockading ships bound for Israel in the Red Sea. It's not blockading other ships. It's only blockading those, but it's doing that because of the Israeli genocide, and it suspended its blockade when there was a ceasefire in Gaza. But my point is the hypocrisy of the U.S. Saying that they're going to influence or control ships that can go in the China Sea is just it needs to be exposed and countered.
Thank you, Rick. Next is Janet, followed by Raj and Paulina. Go ahead, Janet.
Thank you, Sharon. Hi, Rick and Elicha. Thank you for your slideshow. You took some great photos, especially the one with your shadows on the camels. By the way, I just posted something in the chat about a joint Egyptian-Chinese Air Force drill at an Egyptian air base that started today. That said, I wanted to bring up something disturbing I've been learning about having to do with social credit systems that get their data from their surveillance systems that feed AI, digital IDs, and CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies, to control our lives. Apparently, China is a few years ahead of the US on this. And they're very upfront about it. I think social credit systems may be part of Project 2025. Anyway, this topic might perhaps be for another time, but I wanted to give an example of China's digital wallet WeChat. You said you used that there, and they don't use much cash in China. WeChat apparently only allows people with a social credit score of 550, it's a carbon footprint score, or higher to recharge their electric cars or buy food from vending machines and Amazon Go-like grocery stores. And if your social credit score is too low, they limit your movement by not allowing you to totally charge your car. They also control other things this way, like whether you can fly, take a train, take a bus, how much power you might get in your home, etc.
That's 2 minutes.
Can I just, yeah, I'm almost done. You did say they did away with gas-powered scooters for electric ones. Electric vehicle and appliance usage can be tracked better than gas-powered ones. So I'm wondering if you're aware of this. Did you encounter anything like this on your trip? And any other comments? Thank you.
I don't know. I think all of that is so new for all of us. I don't understand. I think every country now, and the US probably is an example of how they are looking into everybody's life. And I cannot say anything about China. Probably they also are doing that. I don't know if they are using it to what you have heard is that a very negative way of using that system to control the people's lives.
Yeah, I think we used WeChat for communication among our group, both before the trip and during the trip. I had problems using the payment side of it. So we used Alipay for that. I think it probably is. I think surveillance is part of modern society, whether it's in China or the UK or the US. There are cameras everywhere, and it was revealed that the US has taps on every email that's sent. And so I think that is part of life today. And we did now. One thing that we did encounter that was unpleasant is that I couldn't use I had a lot of problems with Gmail, and so they do control the internet there, so you have to get a workaround there.
But I did not have any problems with Gmail. I don't know why was it. I had absolutely no problem with Gmail, but you did have. And I think he was trying to use the hotel Wi-Fi, and I wasn't.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that may have been, Elicha was using our T-Mobile account, whereas I was trying to use the Wi-Fi, and then I tried to set up a VPN, which of course is a way to get around security. And I think they knew I was trying to use a VPN, and so they targeted me more. Uh, but in terms of restriction, but there were people on our delegation that were not having problems. I did have problems. I talked with a Chinese friend of mine who I've done some work with, and he's an attorney in Shanghai, and he said, well, you have to use the right VPN to get around the controls. So there is internet control in China. There definitely is. So that's something to be aware of. But as Elicha's saying, she was just using the T-Mobile, which of course they didn't have in Xinjiang. In some of the remote areas, we didn't have signal from the T-Mobile. But it is, that was our experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sharon, you're probably on mute.
Yeah, she is.
Raj, you're next. You need to unmute, Raj.
Okay, thank you. Rick and Elicha, thank you for a very nice presentation. Got to see a very prosperous country. Even Xinjiang seemed to me more prosperous than the United States from your slides. So it's very impressive. Whatever the system, their accomplishments are great. I mean, Chinese accomplishments. This is over a period of just 35 years. So I think we have to pay tribute to the system that could do this. Now, having said that, I have to tell you, I came to the United States in '66. I flew into Chicago, went to University of Illinois. I hadn't gone to the Black neighborhoods of Chicago. I knew about the history of slavery and all that in reading in India in high school. So I knew there was this going on, but from a casual look, I said to myself, and I was oriented towards socialism because that was the wave in India. So as a young man, I favored socialism. But I said to myself, if this is capitalism achievement, what's wrong with it? I found myself telling myself, be honest, Raj, are you being an ideological person? So my question to you both is, what did you see in China that you can say this is socialism, not capitalism? I mean, any conversation in a socialist society, people are political. They talk politics. In a capitalist society, people become consumerist. Even if they're successful in removing absolute poverty, that's an achievement. We should give it to them. But to distinguish a socialist society from a capitalist one is not liberalism. It is really radicalism of social justice. What did you find in China during your trip that can validate that? That's my question. Thank you.
Just from my perspective, I was in Cuba about maybe 8 years ago for a conference, and I got a paper from a Chinese diplomat, and in that paper, it was very clear that they have a planned economy. It's not a casual thing that one industry does this, one magnate does that. No, it's the Communist Party that controls the planning of the economy for the whole country. And they had stages, and they say by this stage, by this year, we should accomplish this much. One of the things that I had read in the paper is by the 2040, all poverty, and China will be a very prosperous country for everybody, especially the agricultural class. That's their goal. to develop the agriculture in a positive way for people and bring happiness and well-being for them. And they are accomplishing that. Shanghai is one of the areas in China that was very agricultural. And the hotels, the shopping centers, the streets are just the same as Shanghai, which is a very old and very prosperous. So they are moving prosperity all over China. Is that socialism? Is that capitalism? Is that consumerism? Whatever it is, the people are enjoying it, and that's good. Education, health, access to nice things, food. They produce tons of fresh, good food for everybody, and the prices are very convenient.
Yeah. Just to add another comment, in terms of, what's the nature of the society, one of the characteristics is there's more equality. Now I know that we've all heard about the extreme wealth that exists there, but it seems, I don't know to what extent that or what percentage that is, but they've definitely raised all the boats. They've definitely provided more equality, and bettering the living conditions, providing indoor plumbing to people who didn't have it before, providing, making sure nobody goes hungry. Now,
Housing, yeah.
and now there were people on our delegation who have the experience of going back in China 40, 50 years when there was extreme poverty and there was extreme hunger. And some of the participants in the group recalled going back to their villages and people were dying of hunger. People were literally starving. And so China, however they've done it, and it's a fascinating question, how, to what extent is it cooperative, to what extent is it socialist, communist, and I don't know. That's an important subject for research. But what we did see and hear from across the board is that there's more equality, there's a lot less poverty, and the administration is popular at the end of the day. Now, Raj, you came to the United States in 1966. That might have been the peak, where the middle class and the working class conditions in the U.S. were really not bad at all. And it was really the Vietnam War was the beginning of the period where the U.S. would do these endless wars that cost trillions of dollars, and instead of investing in improving conditions in the U.S., we invested in war abroad, killing millions of people, killing tens of thousands of U.S. citizens, and bankrupting the country. So that, I think you arrived at the peak, and it was a legitimate question. And of course, many people from the Soviet Union came here, and they would stay in a middle class area of the US, and they say, what the heck, boy, these people are living high off the hog, and if this is capitalism, let's have it. Of course, they were not going to the ghettos, they weren't seeing the discrimination, and what we've all seen over the last 40, 50 years is a steady increase in poverty and decline in the middle class, both in percentage and in quality, I think.
So my question, just quickly to follow up, is that couldn't that be the 1966 China that you saw?
Well, except that there's more equality, and in terms of their international relations, China contributes to other countries. They don't just take. And I saw that myself in the early 1970s in Africa. I was in Tanzania, working with an organization that worked with the Southern African liberation movements in Angola, Mozambique, South Africa, and so forth. But in Dar es Salaam, that China was building the Tanzam Railroad, which was a huge contribution. Zambia is a landlocked country, and the Tanzam Railroad was huge for them. China also built a huge textile plant in Dar es Salaam that allowed them to produce their own cloth. And the Tanzanians are incredibly beautiful, creative fabric designers. And that textile plant allowed them to implement their designs. So I think China does not exploit other countries. It's a win, you know, they do it because it's a win-win. It's good for them too, but it's not an exploitative relationship the way the U.S. does.
Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I turned off my video because my internet is unstable. We have two more people, Paulina and Golden, and then I think we're going to close at our usual time of 12:30. Go ahead, Paulina.
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks, Rick and Elicha. I really enjoyed your presentation. I have a very brief question, and it's about the economist Michael Hudson points out very often that one distinguishing characteristic of the Chinese system is that banking and credit is completely nationalized. And I wonder if you could comment on that and, you know, the implications of that. Even if there is a lot of private enterprise, the control of the lending is under the Chinese Communist Party and the planning that they do. Is that correct, in your opinion?
I think that's maybe correct. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Most countries in Latin America do have centralized control of their economy. I think we have a pseudo control of our economy, but Wall Street controls our economy and the big investors.
Yeah, that's a fascinating comment, Paulina. Of course, I have high respect for Michael Hudson, but we didn't explore that, and frankly, I know very little about it. But it's certainly the case that in this country the banks are not. It's for private business. It's all corporate, and that would be a huge way of guiding the economy through the control of investments and loans that makes all the difference, really.
Well, just remember how they are privatizing education, healthcare here, and in China is the opposite.
Yes, thank you.
Someone asked me in the chat why we're going to end at 12:30. We actually started the discussion at 11:30. Even though we started the presentation late, we've had an hour of discussion, which is our usual protocol. So that's why I'm saying that Gulden is going to be the last person called on. Please go ahead, Gulden.
Hi, Rick and Alicia, thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. My question is, I believe you said that you visited there in last October. That was before Trump's time. So I have been hearing that some of the countries, some of the parts of Canada and Australia, because of Trump's policies, people are really hostile against Americans. So my question is, would there be still safe to visit China with American passport and speaking English? Thanks.
I think this propaganda, this hate propaganda is one way from here to there. We did not feel any animosity against us. We don't understand the language, but people were very, very friendly, very helpful. He looks gringo. I don't look gringo, but I don't look Chinese at all. No, I do look a little bit Chinese sometimes. No, it's very safe. It's very safe. We did not see but one police in Shanghai. He didn't have arms. He no guns, nothing. And he was the most helpful person that did not know how to help us, and he wanted to help us. People get out of their way to direct you, to facilitate somebody looked at us and said, "Oh, you show us your identification. You are old. Pay half of the price of something that we needed because we were citizens, senior citizens." The transportation is very easy. If nobody bothers you, the airport, they were very careful looking at our pictures and this and that, but nothing that made us feel unsafe because we had U.S. passports.
Yeah, we heard that 10 or 15 years ago, there were lots of U.S. Tourists in China. There are very few today, but that's not because of negative reception on the Chinese side. I think just on the contrary, as Elicha is saying, they were very welcoming, and we had no problems anywhere. And regarding the Trump administration, of course, they had 4 years but previously, so they're aware of how erratic Trump is. Xi Jinping, a few days ago, he was delivering a speech saying they're not worried, they're not bowing to the tariffs. They're reciprocating a genuine reciprocity. And he said the Chinese economy is like the ocean. If you've just got a pond or a small lake, a storm can cause a lot of trouble on a small lake, but a storm doesn't cause a big trouble on an ocean, which is so vast. And so they're not. I don't think they're particularly worried. We definitely encourage other people to visit China. It's very accessible. It's very doable. If you want to go on your own, that's possible. If you want to go as part of a group, then I recommend China Educational Tours, which was very good for us.
Thank you, Rick and Elicha. Before we end the recording and the program, I would like to just remind everyone that our website is ICSS Marks, all one word, ICSSmarks.org. Please consider donating to our ongoing expenses. And next week, we're going to talk about tariffs and trade. And we're also, another upcoming program is about the potential war between the U.S. war on Iran.
Institute for the Critical Study of Society at the Niebuhr Proctor Marxist Library receives no corporate funding, nor do we have any paid staff. We rely on the support of working class folks that share our commitment to the socialist legacy of Karl Marx. We continue to need funds to meet necessary expenses. Since we can no longer pass the hat at our in-person forums, please send contributions to our treasurer, either online via PayPal or by check. The PayPal ID is ICSS Sunday, SUNDAY, @yahoo.com, and the name is Richard Fallenbaum. And checks may be made out to Richard Fallenbaum and sent to him at 1225 Nielsen Street, Berkeley, California, 94706. Fallenbaum is spelled Fallenbaum. To donate directly to the Marxist Library, send a check to the Niebuhr Proctor Marxist Library at 6501 Telegraph Avenue, Oakland, California, 94609, or directly or donate online at www.paypal.me/npml. For information, write to npml@marxistlibr.org. And the website is marxistlibr.org.